Welcome to the Books, Beards, Booze podcast, where we talk books, drink booze, and have beards.
All right. So I am Bob of TalesbyBob.
And I'm Derek from the Heartwild.
Oh, nice.
I'm enjoying
nice.
it. Enjoying it a lot.
Yeah. Now we will be doing, for those who aren't aware, one of the best books to come out in the past couple of years is Nicholas Eames' Kings of the Wild. I've read it. Derek's almost done with the audiobook.
I'm about 13 hours through.
Yes.
17.
Superfan Tanya, I think she finished it tonight, actually.
Mm-hmm. I know she was saying she was going to finish it sometime soon.
And New Zealand brand ambassador Ryan he's about halfway through listening to it.
Insert nickname of my friend Chris from Ohio that I didn't think about the nickname for until just this moment. Bought the audiobook to listen to as soon as he's done with what he's doing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So we're all enjoying that.
Apparently we're riding hard for Kings of the Wild.
Oh yeah, so we will be doing a bonus episode where we do a deep dive on that. Probably bring in Superfan Tanya, and
which should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anyway, so as we said, going forward, we are going to focus on trying regional liquors and beers. And this week, we're trying Clyde May's Alabama-style whiskey. We have a bottle here, and let's give it a sip. Okay, I like that.
A lot of people don't. It's the thing.
I think most people who say they don't like it, they haven't had the Alabama style, because this is not the main brand.
So have you looked up the difference between how they make all this stuff?
No.
So I've done some research.
Good. I'm glad one of us did.
I may or may not have gotten slightly intoxicated on the remnants of my whiskey over the last weekend.
Yeah.
And watched about 4 hours of whiskey reviews on the YouTube.
The YouTube.
Yeah. And one of the reason I caught on is I found a channel that had done a review within the past couple days of what was it? Either was it Booker's and this Clyde May's?
Okay.
Or no, Devil's Cut. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Devil's Cut and Clyde May's. And it's like a dude who likes whiskey and then like a level 3 whiskey sommelier. He actually I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name, but he's the owner of the only whiskey academy in the world, where he trains people to be able to review whiskey and stuff like that. It's a really interesting.
So, just throwing this out there, anyone who wants to sponsor a field trip for me and Derek to go to this whiskey school, we will love you forever.
Anyways, according to them, what makes Clyde May's different and what actually defines Alabama style is they make the whiskey and then they add apples. And age it further in barrels with actual apples in them.
Okay. I don't taste any apple in that.
Apparently, it's extremely apple. We're not refined enough to be able to pick this up. However, once they mentioned it, when you sit there and smell it...
Oh, yeah. No, I can definitely smell the apple.
Exactly. So once you know what you're looking for...
Okay.
Yeah. There's a
it's no crown apple.
No, because that's
that's probably not real apples. That's apple flavoring. But.
Exactly, but apparently all of the Clyde May's has a strong apple
finish
note kind of thing.
Okay, gotta learn all these fancy terms.
You know what? I'm gonna do more research. I found it. I had a lot of fun watching those videos. Like they're really interesting and fun dudes, and they made it like a. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But
I will say this is a good tasting whiskey, and it was a good price.
Yeah, it was all right. Not my favorite.
I would not. This is not going to become my new go-to whiskey. I mean, that's going to be heaven hell, of course. I kind of want to try and break it because I just don't understand. I get because I drink it with Coke, and it's good. It gets me real drunk.
Well, I feel as if...
cheap.
Okay.
The price is right.
Okay.
See
if I can't find something else that's cheap as balls, and we'll get the job done mixed with Coke.
Okay. We'll figure it out. So let's dive into our news for this week.
Okay. Let me start with the beards portion
Let's
because
do it.
don't have much to say other than last week.
I just have a little.
Other than last week, I did the story about the homeless man who the cop shaved and stuff like that, and I just wanted to update the story. The fact that he started working at that McDonald's this week.
Good.
He actually, funnily enough, you know how people always talk about the cop mustache?
Yeah.
He still has a mustache.
Nice.
So he still has a mustache,
Nice.
and he took a picture with the cop, and he met with him and stuff like that, and he's working at that McDonald's now. So that's pretty cool.
Good. My news, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
Procter & Gamble reported a drop in their quarterly earnings. And they said that it is in part because the rise in men growing beards has hurt the sales of their Gillette brand razors.
That's amazing.
Like it's now enough that it's hitting their... Like there were other factors, of course, but that got listed as like in the actual report. Like that was... And they were saying, it was like, they've dropped the price to get like a bigger market share, yada, yada, yada. But it's like there's nothing you can do against a fashion trend. Like they're like, you can't defend against a fashion trend.
And you know what? I feel like we should support this. Like, go grow a beard.
Mm-hmm.
Because beards are awesome.
It's almost as though we encourage you to do that every week.
Yeah. You know what? It was entirely us. We were
Oh,
responsible for that. Yeah. That was all of us.
Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
We're
coming for you. We're coming for that neck.
I'm sure I'll be hearing from your lawyers. My booze news is kind of small this week.
Mine's interesting, but not... It's only tangential.
Yeah. There's a new Jack Daniels out. It's a bottled in bond.
I don't know what that means.
It has something to do with the fact that all the whiskey has to come from the same season.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Yeah.
And it was started, I don't know, we'll go into that. Like, I read up on what bottled in bond means, but it's kind of, I'm not really sure. Yeah. I don't want to give you all a bunch of false information. Anyway, there's a new Jack Daniels out there. It's bottled in bond. Super excited about it. I was super hype. And then I found out
how expensive it was.
No, price is right.
Really?
Yeah. But here's the kicker: it's only going
Jack
to
Daniels.
I like Jack, all right. It's only going to be sold in duty-free shops. It's going to be sold worldwide, but only in duty-free shops, not in ABC stores, not in grocery stores for those states lucky enough to have that. It's only going to be sold in duty-free shops, it says. Yes.
What's a duty-free shop?
It's like airports and cruise lines. It's like, it's huge bottles. Real cheap.
I was really hoping you were going to say, tax-free. So any place where there's no tax. And I would have been like, on base?
It's something weird. It's like duty-free means like when you bring it back into the country, you're allowed to bring X amount in without paying a duty on it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I was super hyped to try it, and I don't know where duty-free shop is.
No. Yeah. Well, do some more research, Bob.
Yeah, I'll get on that.
My booze news is about a place in Petworth Citizen, Washington, D.C., called The Reading Room. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
The Reading Room is apparently a lending library in the back of a bar.
Nice.
So I think it's actually a bar and pub style place where they have where you can eat and stuff there too. But they have a back room where they have bookshelves of donated books that you can just take for the lend.
I know that there's a restaurant in, I think, like Vermont or something like that, that they give you a book with every order.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that on Reddit the other day.
But not only do they do that, but the person that works the bar in the reading room is a legit mixologist and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So they take whatever they read over the course of the week, because this is only available on Friday and Saturday nights.
Yeah.
I think it's Friday and Saturday nights. I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
Yeah, Friday and Saturdays. They make original shots, or not shots, but alcoholic beverages based on what they read over the course of the week.
Nice.
So
nice. I'd like to go there.
So it changes pretty much every week. And they'll take like quotes from the book, and if it reminds them of a certain ingredient,
Yeah.
they'll work that ingredient into a drink, or if they mention a drink, they'll serve that with some kind of twist or something like that. Sounds really cool, and I thought it was pretty interesting.
I like it. So, my book news. So, get this. Research suggests that fans of sci-fi and fantasy have more mature beliefs about romantic relationship than readers who gravitate towards suspense, romance, or even highbrow classical literature. So, here's how they did this. It was a research team led by psychologist Stephanie C. Stern of the University of Oklahoma. And the study was published in the Journal of Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativity, and the Arts. And they got 404 adults, slightly more than half of them women, who were recruited online. And their exposure to 7 genres: classics, contemporary lit fic, romance, fantasy, science fiction, suspense, and horror were measured. And it was basically they would put up like a list of authors and be like, what authors do you recognize? Kind of deal. And that's kind of how they judged it.
To kind of pick out what you read.
Yeah. And so they filled out the survey, and there was a list of unrealistic, unhelpful beliefs about relationships. Is disagreement destructive? Or here are the statements. Disagreement is destructive. Mind reading is expected. Romantic partners cannot change. The sexes are different. And the expectation of sexual perfection. And so they, like, which of these do you think is true kind of deal?
Yeah.
So people familiar with romance fiction were more likely on average to believe that the sexes being fundamentally different in their wants and needs. They overwhelming or are much more likely to believe that. The classics had a similar limited impact. Those familiar with their authors were less likely to endorse only one belief, and that was that disagreement is destructive. But people who could identify the science fiction and fantasy authors were less likely, on average, to believe 4 of the 5 myths. The only one that they believed was like a true thing was about sexual perfection. And there's a joke to be made there about guys' basements not getting laid, sci-fi fantasy fans.
I think it's more appropriate to make the joke about the fact that you use what's the word archetypes in a lot of fantasy, because you kind of have to borrow. Okay, I'm apparently going a little bit more deep into this than I was going to, but since it's come, so, in my opinion, and I think this is, I don't really know how you would disagree with this necessarily, but if you do, that's cool, and you're wrong. Classical literature focuses more on prose and characterization, whereas literature, or genre literature, in particular science fiction and fantasy, focus more on plot and world building. And because the reason they can do that in those is because they take, I don't want to say stock, but I can't think of the correct word right now.
They're much more closely modeled on The Hero's Journey by Campbell.
I wouldn't even necessarily say that. I would just say that the character themselves, they use stereotypical, iconic character traits that typify a hero, which means they're practically perfection. And they use those more often so that they can focus more on other areas.
Yeah.
So people that read a lot of that are still going to believe in the idea of a sexual perfection out there kind of thing. But anyways.
I can see that. So what's
that was pretty interesting, though. I've read a lot of...
So it's basically ladies and or dudes, depending on your preference. Just keep that in mind. You want the perfect romantic partner, go look at their bookshelf, and if you don't see sci-fi fantasy, you're fucking up.
Yeah, if you don't see... let's just not. Anyways. My book news was a thing that I specifically messaged you about before we came to this, just because I don't necessarily want to talk about the article that much, so much as my opinions on it. Okay, so Wired.com had an article called The Rise of the Sci-Fi Novella. And the article makes the argument that science fiction novellas are becoming more popular right now.
I would agree with that.
I would agree in the concept that they are quote unquote more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a big thing. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's on the rise.
I would say it's on the rise, and I would lay it squarely at the feet of Tor.
Tor, yeah, that's the point. But the point is, the way Tor does their thing is they don't. It's not like I would make the argument that the evidence he said as to why he felt this way or she felt this way. I can't actually remember if it was a male or female. Or
They said
the article. They said that the fact that Tor was selling novellas like this now was one thing, and because the indie store that they go to has a shelf that they have science fiction suggested novellas on it. That was the entire. That was the extent of their evidence. And the entire time I was thinking, I was like, I don't necessarily disagree with you, except for the fact that, one, the fact that your store has a shelf for them doesn't necessarily mean that much. Now, the fact that Tor does what they do is a little bit more. I think it would speak to an increase in acceptability or profitability, maybe. But even that, I wouldn't say is that much because, one, I looked all over the goddamn place to try and find statistics on their sales numbers, and I could not find them anywhere.
Yeah.
But the fact that they sell them by order, they don't even print them until they've been ordered, to me speaks that they're not sure how much that it's going to sell, so they're not going to bother printing them until someone orders them, which I just feel like if there was a more solid market, then they would print them and send them out to be sold.
I don't think so, because I think now because of print-on-demand publishing, that's how a lot of this stuff is going to. I think the future of publishing, to a large degree, is going to go much like as print-on-demand technology catches up. I think you're going to see a lot more of these major publishing houses go to more print-on-demand, just because it's a much safer investment for them.
Yeah, I get that.
But I mean, a lot of these novellas are going to be ebook sales. It doesn't cost them anything. I mean, they've already paid for it. If they weren't profitable, Tor wouldn't still be doing them. That's the thing. Like, Tor has been doing them for a while now.
They've been doing them for 4 years.
Right, yeah. I mean, if they weren't making a profit, if there wasn't demand, Tor wouldn't still be doing it.
Well, my point is, people will buy them, sure, but they're not taking any risk, so why wouldn't they do it the way they're doing it?
Well, sure, they're taking a risk. I mean, they're having to pay these people. They're having to get the stuff edited. You know, I mean, while their editors are working on that, they're not working on something else. So clearly it's worth them paying an editor to edit this when they could be editing a full-length novel.
Yeah, but a lot of these things are just not... They were just releasing them through Tor's newsletter anyways. Yeah. So it's not like... I mean, it's...
But you're still having to pay someone to...
Edit it? But they were doing that anyways.
But my point is, they could be editing something else that would be more profitable in theory. Like that editor could be off working on editing the next Patrick Rothfuss or this or you know that like there's obviously like if all they're if it's not making them any kind of money in some way, they wouldn't be doing it. Like the profit margins are far too low in the publishing industry.
Here's what I'm saying. They're going to be editing it anyways because they would still be releasing it in their newsletter. So it's not like they're saving any time. They're just doubling down on it, being able to release it.
My bet is they would not be releasing anywhere near the volume of novellas.
Well, they use them free. Well, they use them for their serials on their newsletter. That's what they would use them both for. So,
but it wouldn't they put out a bunch of these novellas now. Like it's a size. It's not like a piddling amount. Like it's like I'm telling you, dude. Profit. I think your average profit margin on a company is 10% or something like that. If you're not clearing at least 10% profit, you're fucking up with your business. Like a book publishing company is doing good at 2%. That's profit margins are so low on this. They would not be sinking the man hours into this if it wasn't profitable. There's a demand for it.
Okay, I mean maybe, but I also I think there's a demand for it, but my thing is, I don't think that there's a growing demand for it. I think that there's people that like reading science fiction and fantasy books that are also interested in the same writers writing novellas.
I would say that
because their biggest novella sellers, I did find this, are all people that, or for the most part, are people that have worked with them before and sold actual novels.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're taking a risk, and they want to keep those people happy. So they're like, hey, we have this little side project that we want to do. It's like, okay, well, that can just be worked into the book deal. I'm not saying, because
I'll say this. I've seen more people talking about it as time goes by. Like, it's my totally anecdotal evidence is that these things are getting a lot more buzz now than they were. Like, I think more and more people are reading them. As more and more people find, because, like, I mean, think about it. Like me, I've read sci-fi fantasy my whole life, and like I've only recently ever started going to Tor's website with any sort of regularity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as just more and more people realize, holy shit, there are tiny books floating around here that I can get, they're gonna snap them up.
Well, because what I was going to say after this was, I don't see the evidence for it, but anecdotally, I know I would be interested in them. Was my point. Was like, I can understand why I would definitely be interested in it, because then you can just get me something that's longer than a short story, because I still struggle with liking short stories. I just feel like a lot of times there's not enough meat on it.
Mm.
But I don't necessarily need a super long, because some ideas just don't warrant the use of a full novel.
I feel that.
So I'm all in for finding novellas to read. I
don't think but my thing is, I definitely don't think you're any sort of anomaly there.
I don't either, but the way the article read, it made it seem like people that weren't already reading science fiction and fantasy were now reading science fiction.
Oh yeah, that seems silly. That seems like,
silly argument to make. I don't really think that's a thing.
Because I do think most of the people that are reading these are all, like you said, they're getting brought in. But like, I mean, there have been some novellas I've looked up and read that I have not read the author, but I have heard good things about the author, kind of deal.
But see, like the only novella Rothfuss wrote one that I've read, and that's
Slow Regard of Silent Things.
Yeah, that's pretty much
amazing.
The only one.
Best thing he ever wrote.
It's not, but it is good.
It's definitely the best thing he ever wrote.
It's really not, but it was good. But yeah, I didn't actually realize the number of things they had available for free on Tor. Like I glanced at it once or twice, and now I went there and saw that.
This week's story.
Well, yeah, that's Tor. one of the. Look at that! I transitioned.
Oh, yeah. So are we transitioning to the?
No.
Oh, cue the harmonica. All right. So let's dive into our short read tall glass this week, which is The City Born Great by N.K. Jemisin. And before we start, used to we would do a deep dive on the author and stuff like that and a bunch of facts. And that was just a bit much. Like, really, we're here for the meat of the story. But I do want to start working in a couple, like, if there's a couple cool facts, I'm going to throw them at you. I got a couple. One, N.K. Jemisin. Yeah. Totally, partly grew up in Mobile, Alabama.
Oh.
Yeah. She won the 2016 and 2017 Hugo for Best Novel. She won the 2018 Nebula and the 2018 Locust for Best Novel. Yes, she has been dominating here lately.
Yeah.
Which I just finished the 5th season today, and I can see why. It's fucking amazing. Also, she is first cousins, once removed, with W. Kamau Bell, the comedian.
I feel like, definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, so let's talk about this story. I liked it. I did not like it as much as I had expected to like it, but I did like it.
I had very mixed feelings about it.
Okay. I'll tell you why I didn't like it. I liked the story. What I think tainted my like for this story was at the beginning when the character meets Paulo.
Uh-huh.
there is no explanation as to how they met. And like at first, it's like, oh well, they must know each other, and then it becomes very clear, like, no, they don't know each other. And that was, to me, that jarred me so much. Like, well, what? How do they come to, like, what? Like, what's going on? And that it threw me out. Like, I would have liked that story so much more if there had been an extra paragraph put in there, basically saying like, this guy brought me in off the street and bought me to buy me some breakfast.
Yeah.
You know, because he, like, as I was reading, it's like he only uses his mouth to smoke cigarettes, never to eat, kind of deal. Like like to me, I kind of got this. Oh well, they must know each other, or have known each other for a while, but they haven't, and it threw me, and it started me out on that story on tilt, and it took me a while to kind of regain my footing. But once I did, I really enjoyed it.
I thought it was good. It took me a while to. Honestly, it was I think this is a really cool idea. That I didn't like the character and didn't necessarily love the execute. I don't like the conversational narrative style. I just
okay.
It's never.
I do really enjoy that style.
And that one is not a me like crapping on something. I realize that's purely just a personal taste. It's just not really for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like it, but most of the time it's just I don't really feel it.
Sometimes you feel like a nut.
And sometimes I don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts.
Ain't nobody got time for no coconut.
Ain't nobody.
But there's a lot of things that kept just snatching me out of it, and it was a lot of the way the character thought, and it just kept snatching me out again and again. Of note, where anytime they mentioned anything that referenced the real world. Like, I understand we're in the real world, like New York, that stuff is fine, but like when they mentioning McDonald's kept bringing me out of it, and then like Carmela Anthony would snatch me out of it, and I'm just like,
to me that just added to it, because it all these are to here, you know, like a lot of times they say like the setting is a character.
Yeah.
Like in this case, it literally was a character, and like
mentioning the streets, the boroughs, all that stuff, none of that fazed me. Because that made sense. That was setting. But, like, mentioning pop culture references is the way I looked at it, really just kept nagging at me.
That's weird.
I hate it in pretty much everything. Like, it so bothers me.
Huh. Yeah, well, that definitely didn't bother me. Yeah, I mean, to me, it made it feel real. You know?
There was plenty. Well, it's in New York. It already feels real to me. But anyways.
I mean, I know me, like, mentioning something that would be in New York wouldn't take me out of the narrative.
It wouldn't me either if they didn't. It's literally the branding. It's like just saying the brand name makes me stop and go, I don't know what it is. Like if they had mentioned like a fancy, they were in a coffee shop or something like that. I'm like, yeah, they've got tons of coffee shops in New York. That makes perfect sense. But as soon as you like tell me the specific one and then talk about how overpriced they are, I'm like, I know, but it just, I don't know what it is about it. But again, this is another personal thing. There was other things that I don't think are personal quirks that I just really didn't like, but I don't really want to get into it. But the idea is awesome.
Yeah.
And there was more research I wanted to do but forgot to do before coming to this conversation. There's a comic book character that's their power set's vaguely similar to this, if I'm remembering it correctly, but it's a thing I've only read of once, so I can't remember for sure.
Yeah.
But
did you have a favorite line?
Yes. You need not be them, but know they are a part of you. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I didn't have a favorite line per se. It was the entire passage where he's crossing the street, where it's just so where he's passing the 6 lanes of traffic, and it's like also it's all caps because there's an 18-wheeler coming, and just like that whole. It was difficult to read, but perfectly fit because it is that. First person, like, just conversational narrative.
Also, it bugged me that it was present tense.
Okay.
But yeah, I know the part.
But like I loved that.
I hated that.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Because like that's something that to me it makes it kind of very real. Like when I first started, it's like, oh, this is difficult to read, but then like it should be like it is like it kind of throws you out a little bit, but to me it then like sucked me right back in more so than it would have, just because it felt like the thoughts would be coming so quick, so jumbled, so chaotic, and like it just made it feel very real to me. For something that was so very not real.
Yeah.
The whole passage where he's like spray painting mouths on the city was amazing.
Yeah, I really liked, since you were talking about that part, the part where it describes what the freeway is and how it's like the
artery and the cars, the white blood cells.
So cool.
Yeah,
that was probably until he started beating things with burrows was the coolest part.
I read some. Did you read the comments on the tour page? Mm-hmm. There were two that stood out. One was a woman basically like, "Well, I live in, I can't remember, it was like Staten Island. I wish my borough had got a mention, in the fight. Like there's like one borough that didn't get mentioned. Like I just wish I had." And there was another. The guy was like, "Oh, so all cops are parasites? Well, I'm out. Like fuck this story." And like a couple people were like, dude, like you got to realize this is a street kid who, in his mind, cops typically are the enemy. Like even before the whole because you're birthing a city thing. Like even before any of that's a thing. Like when cops walk into the restaurant, he tries to avoid them because
he's a homeless person.
Yeah, that's his life, and like that guy was not having it. He was not having it.
I get that. I understand that, but what I thought brought it back was when the fact that two of them were actually like that evil creature thing.
Well, and then it's like the guy's like, oh well, they're blah blah blah, they're parasites. Well, it's like, well, yeah, and then later on though, he walks right by two other cops and they didn't do anything. They don't do anything. Like,
none of them do anything to him. It's just the way he sees the world.
Yeah, that was the point. Like most people are trying to make. It's like, dude, like we get it, we get that, but like you gotta understand, like this is written from a viewpoint like.
It's a non-reliable narrative.
Yeah, well, like, don't write it off just because the viewpoint is not your own. Like, do you want to only ever read stuff that shares your exact viewpoint? Like, what a shitty way to live. So, and it was one of those like, I don't feel like I don't think N.K. Jemisin was trying to say all cops are parasites. Like, I don't think that's not the point of the story.
Yeah.
She was writing how her character would actually think and feel in that situation. And did a good job of it. And so it's like one of those deals like just don't be too sensitive about stuff. Like you can separate the view of a character from the view of an author. Sometimes authors have like, do I think Mark Lawrence enjoys raping 13-year-olds?
Yeah.
No. But George did it.
I will say that depending on where that person is coming from, the idea of personal politics bleeding over into the art is really bad right now.
It does happen. It does, but I don't think.
But my point was, even if that was what was happening, I didn't care because at one point they are literally the bad guys.
Right,
it's like it's not even like it's like but like this one actually is.
If I had a complaint other than that first part. I think the chase scene went a little long, plot-wise.
I can see that.
Went a little long. But at the same time, I'll just say, I really do think that chase scene went too long. But I think how she ended it, I was thinking, like, how the fuck do you end this? Mm-hmm. And the way she ended it was amazing. So I really liked how she got rid of the cops. But then I also liked how, that moment of, oh, well, these white blood cells have gotten rid of it. But then it was like, oh, well, now every car is carrying the taint with them. Yeah. So
I like that. See, this in the last episode, I stopped myself from saying something. This is something that I want more of, but not a full novel of, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like, if this was a novella, I think I would
You know what this feels like? This almost felt like a Neil Gaiman Neverwhere.
I don't know anything. I didn't
like
read
this felt like a
Neverwhere,
China.
but the entire time I was
this
like,
story felt much more like a China Millville kind of story. This felt like it. If you liked this story, China Millville short story collection would be something for you to try on. Looking for Jake would be my recommendation.
The entire time I was like, this feels like Neil Gaiman to me.
Yeah, China Millville is Neil Gaiman-esque, but weirder.
Yeah, that was my thing. Like the idea of like cities getting.
Yeah.
I wanted more of that just because like what other cities do I not know about from history that quote unquote died first?
Yeah.
And, like,
to give a shout out to a guy who doesn't listen to our podcast, this whole time I was reading this, it made me think of the story, the comic book idea that Dusty had.
Oh, yeah.
That was set in Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like that I managed to pick up who Paolo was before it got to the reveal. I was just happy about that.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. Couple critiques, but I feel pretty good. This was a good story. It engendered some good discussion.
Yeah,
good start to the season,
story-wise.
I was
really frustrated because the first... I think it ended up printing out to about 10 pages for me. For the first, 4.5, I really didn't like it.
Yeah.
It bothered me. I had to keep starting and restarting.
I liked the first section, and then the diner scene with Paolo threw me, and then from that point on, I was fine for the most part.
The first part with Paolo threw me, but then the more I saw them around each other, I was like, okay, well, I don't understand what happened there.
Yeah.
But I like
their interaction.
Right, right. But
yeah.
I was annoyed that I didn't understand.
Yeah,
whatever.
And I'll say this, for our LGBTQ listeners out there, I think if you're looking for representation, N.K. Jemisin is a good person to look at. I just read the 5th season. The main character is involved in a sort of polyamorous relationship. It's basically her and her 2 husbands kind of deal.
Yeah.
And there's some good representation there, I feel like. You see some things that you don't typically see in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I can't remember the name of our story for the next short read tall glass. I do know that it is written by a doctor from New Zealand. I decided to track down a bit of fiction from New Zealand, which was super fucking hard. And New Zealand brand ambassador Ryan was virtually no help, but giving him a little shout out, he did try and help me find one.
I feel like I had a suggestion for a coming up episode.
But after that, we're kind of open. So, we are open to submissions. If
it's gonna really bug.
Yeah, we are open to submissions, but I don't know. We'll find something good for you. As we encourage you, as always, you can email us at booksbeardsbooze@gmail.com. Any of your questions, concerns, complaints, any ideas you have for book battle questions. Next week will be a book battle question episode. And you can also message anything TalesbyBob, the website, the Gmail, the Tumblr, the Twitter, the fucking Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and I will get it and I will respond. Yeah.
YouTube.
Oh, yeah, we now have a YouTube channel. All these are going on there. I encourage you to go watch it. But yeah, as we sign off, I encourage you to go forth and grow a great beard.